Hey y'all, this is Mrs. Tran-bloom recording for 3.6, solving higher order polynomials and writing polynomials equations. Solving means finding the x-intercepts or root, okay? And normally students, when you see the instructions that solve, that means if you ever see it said solve, that means it's already equal to 0 for you. So for example, the easiest an example I can come up with right now is 2x minus 100, right? Solve means there's one variable that we want you to solve for. Now sometimes they don't have it equal to 0. They can have it like this: 2x equals, for example, 4x plus 9. So that means you want to solve for that one variable. It doesn't have to be x either. That is the same, or I wouldn't say the same, very similar to finding the x-intercept or the roots of the equation, okay? Which are the x-intercept or the root, which are order pair written as whatever that x value is, comma 0. The degree of a polynomial is the degree of the term with the largest degree. Generally, the number of degree indicates the max number of solutions the equation should have. The fundamental theorem of algebra states that a polynomial of degree n has n roots, including multiplicities and complex roots. Now, complex, if you guys remember, this is your imaginary answers, okay? And multiplicity, we had two types, if you guys remember, the odd multiplicity and the even. So let's try to see if you can finish 1 to 9 here. Find the degree, possible number of solutions, and x-intercept. So what they want to find is the degree. We're going to write it out and then we'll fill in the answer. We want to find number of solutions, so max number of solutions, okay? That will be based on your degree. Then x and y-intercept. What I'm really doing here, students, is write it all out and then box it up. What we are going to do later is do the work below, okay? Just like that. So for this example 1, y equals 2x minus 5. This is a linear equation, so your degree is going to be 1. And now where is that located? The degree is the power of the highest power of the equation. Since we only have one variable x, and that variable x, you do not see any degree or any power on it, so that means it has a degree of 1. Now that means the max number of solutions, the most answer or the most x-intercept we would have is 1. Now we would need to do the work for x and y-intercept below, and then we'll write it in. So x-intercept, student, is when y equals to 0. Okay, so 0 equals 2x minus 5. Add 5 to both sides. So now you're going to have 5 equals to 2x. Divide both sides by 2. X is now 5 over 2, simplest improper fraction. Or you can put it in mixed, but you do need to fill it in. Here we go. 5 over 2, comma 0. Now we want to find the y-intercept next, so I'm going to find it right here. Y-int, students, is when x has to be 0. So we go and we fill in 0 for any time there's an x variable. Well, 0 times 2 is 0, and 0 minus 5 is negative 5. So we do have a y-intercept at negative 5, and again, fill that in with an order pair, so 0, comma, negative 5. So that's how we do number 1. What I want to do right now is to take some time and fill in this box for all of the questions, okay? So you do the same. So students, I took some time and wrote the degree, the max number of solutions, x-int and y-int for all of the questions. That would just save us some time, okay? So if you need to, just hit pause and do the same thing. So let's do number 2. You guys ready? Let's get a pen here. So number 2 says, state the degree. So let's look at the equation. Y equals 2x squared minus 5x plus 2. Now this right here, minus 5x, that has a degree of 1, plus 2, technically students, that's 2x to the 0 power, because anything raised to the 0 exponent is always 1. So that's why we normally don't write x to the 0 power. So currently, the highest degree would be 2. So that's what we are going to fill out for our degree 2. That means we should have 2 answers, but that's not necessarily true. So the max number of solutions, the most number of solutions that we're going to end up with would be 2. That's the same thing as saying the max number of x-intercept would be 2. Okay? Let's solve for the x-intercept. So I'm going to erase this here because I need space. X-intercept, students, is when y again equals to 0. So 0 equals 2x squared minus 5x plus 2. Now this is when you guys factor. Go ahead and take a minute to factor that out. Okay, so however you guys factor, hopefully your next step, if you guys factor by grouping, your next step, we go from 3 terms to 4 terms. So my 4 terms are now 2x squared. We will substitute negative 5x with minus 4x minus 1x. You don't have to write the negative 1, by the way. Okay. After this, you are going to factor by grouping. The first group, we are going to take out 2x. We're going to end up with an x minus 2. The second group, we are going to take out a negative 1. And again, we are going to end up with an x minus 2. Make sure these two always match. If they don't, it's either not factorable or we did something wrong. Then from here, we can write 2x minus 1 as one of the factors, and the second factor would be x minus 2. Remember, this still, we have to set it equal to 0. Then take each factor and set it equal to 0 and solve for x, okay? Over here, we're going to add 1 to both sides. So now it's 2x equals 1. Divide both sides by 2. X is now 1/2. Over here, it's a little bit simpler. We're going to add both sides by 2, and so x comes out to be 2. As stated earlier, remember, we can have at most 2 x-intercept, aka at most 2 answers. So these are your solutions. Okay, so these are your solutions if we ask you to solve. But because we are asking you guys to write the x-intercept, so we have to write these as an order pair. So 1/2, 0, and your second order pair would be 2, 0. And we are going to find the y-intercept next, which we are going to set x equals to 0. Well, y-intercept x equals to 0 is actually really easy because all you have to do is plug in 0 for all the x's. If you do that, this now turns to 0. This now turns in 0, and you only have 2 left. So y-intercept is now 0, 2. And that's number 2, y'all. Ready for number 3? Number 3 says y equals x squared minus 16. Again, the degree would be 2 because that's the highest exponent between the x squared and the minus 16, right? The negative 16, would you agree? That has a degree of 0. So degree is, 2. That means you will have at most 2 solutions or at most 2 x-intercepts, okay? So to find the x-intercept, we are now going to take y and set it equal to 0 and solve, okay? This is a difference of 2 squared, so why don't you take a minute to solve for that? Not to solve, to factor it out. So hopefully, students, you guys factored out and you guys ended up with an x minus 4 times x plus 4. Then similarly, we take each quantity and we set it equals to 0, okay? Then add 4 here to both sides. X is now 4, that's one answer. Minus 4 now to both sides. X is now negative 4, and that's the second root. Now we're not asking for roots here, we're asking for x and y-intercept, so we are going to write these as order pairs. So those are 2 x-intercept, and again, it should really line up with this right here, okay? Is there another way of solving that x? Yes, guys. Once you guys have it here, the other method of solving would be adding 16 to both sides, just like that. Then you're gonna have 16 equals x squared. Then from here, what you want to do is take the square root. But if you take the square root, be very mindful that you're gonna end up with a plus or minus 4. And look, it's the same thing, okay? All right, Y-intercept. And again, I love looking for Y-intercept because we are going to substitute 0 in for x. And if we do that, this is immediately gone. If that's gone, then guys, you just have negative 16 left, just like that. Example 4, y equals x to the third minus 10x squared plus 25x. Oh man, the degree for this one. So now what you want to compare is, okay, out of these three terms, which of those three terms has the biggest exponent, right? So it would be obvious that this first one has a degree of 3. That's the biggest exponent. So the degree would be 3 for that equation. Max number of solutions. We can have at most 3 solutions, aka 3 x-intercepts, aka 3 roots. Now let's look for them manually. Ready? X-intercept means y equals to 0. So x to the third minus 10x squared plus 25. And again, we have to factor this out. So hopefully you guys have mastered your factoring skill by now. First thing in factoring, we are going to check for GCF. We do have one. We have a GCF of an x, and we are going to factor that out. So we have x squared now minus 10x plus 25. What I would like for you guys to do right now is factor this remaining trinomial. Okay, so however you guys factor, or however you guys go from a trinomial to a quad, like 4 terms, make sure you guys know how to do it and do it really well. Okay, now I'm going to go from 3 terms to 4 terms. Oops, it's a minus. If you guys don't know how to factor, please talk to us, your teachers. Okay. From here, we will factor by grouping on this line right here. What we want to do is take out the x. We're going to end up with an x minus 5. Over here, we will factor out a 5. That is now going to be x minus 5 again. And again, remember, we have to check for those to make sure they are exactly the same. So we're going to have x minus 5 times x minus 5. But don't forget, we got to drop that dude down. And I don't know why I did a square. So don't do a square right there on that dude, just an x. So drop that guy down in the front and set equals to 0. Now, as you can see, x minus 5 and x minus 5, they are exactly the same. So technically, if you wanted to, you can just x minus 5 and 2 to the power of 2, just like that. Okay? So take each factor, set equals to 0. First is x equals to 0. Nice and easy. Over here, students, you do not need to write x minus 5 twice to solve. You can just write it once, and that should be fine. Now, x equals 5 when you add 5 to both sides. But, okay, again, be mindful. Can you guys see that that's an even exponent right there? So back in the days, if you guys remember, this would constitute an even multiplicity, okay? An even multiplicity. Okay. But when we are writing it as an x-intercept, or when we are writing it as solutions or roots, we only have to write out x equals to 0, x equals to 5. Although x-intercept, though, y'all, you have to write it as an ordered pair, just like that. Okay. So let's compare. We said the max number of solutions would be 3, but currently we only have 2. A 0 and a 5. That's okay. That's why there's this word says max. Max does not necessarily mean we have to have all of them. Earlier, remember, we did mention that we can have less. Okay. Y-intercept is when x equals to 0. So what happens when you plug in 0 for each and every term? All of them turns into 0. So we do have one y-intercept at 0, 0. Example 5. Wow, this one is serious, right? F of x equals negative 3x to the third minus 24x squared plus 11x plus 8. We have 4 terms here, so let's look at the exponent for each term. This one has an exponent of 3, this one has an exponent of 2, this one has an exponent of 1, and this guy over here has an exponent of 0. So the degree would have to be 3 because that's the highest exponent. So that means we should have at most 3 solutions. And again, we could have technically none. So X-intercept, immediately let's set y or f of x equals to 0. Okay. All right. Okay, so after we substitute f of x with 0, we now need to factor. Would be here to take out a negative 3x squared. If we take out a negative 3x squared from a negative 3x, we are now going to end up with a positive x. And if we factor negative 3 from a negative 24, that will give us a positive 8, just like that. Then next we are going to factor out an 11, and we're going to end up with x plus 8. Can you see that those are exactly the same? So we would have negative 3x squared plus 11 times the quantity of x plus 8, and don't forget, drop your x equals to 0 down. I'm sorry, y equals to 0 down. Take each factor and set it equals to 0. So negative 3x squared plus 11 equals 0. X plus 8 equals 0. Let's solve. Ready? So subtract 11 from both sides. Negative 3x squared equals negative 11. Divide both sides by negative 3. Now x squared equals 11 over 3. Oh man. Now we have to take the square root, y'all. And if we take the square root, make sure we have 2 answers, a plus and a minus. Okay. So now we have x equals plus or minus the square root of 11 over 13, in which we can write it in 2 different radicals so we can rationalize. To rationalize, we would need to multiply the top and bottom by radical 3 to get rid of the radical term and the bottom. So now x equals plus or minus on the numerator, radical 11 times radical 3 is now radical 33. In the denominator, radical 3 times radical 3 is square root of 9. Now square root of 9 is just now simply 3. So that's one set. So that's 2 x-intercepts right there, or 2 solutions, or 2 roots. Now on the other one, it's a lot easier, would you agree? We would have an answer at negative 8. So students, for this one, we have 3 x-intercepts. Okay, let's just write it in. Now I'm going to write the plus or minus square root of 33 over 3, comma 0. That would be 2 answers. And then the second one, I'm just going to write negative 8, comma 0. Y-intercept, I love looking for y-intercept, as you know already, because I could just go up here and I'm just going to cancel out all the ones that turn into 0, right? When x substituted in, that's a 0, and a 0. So guess what? Y-intercept is at 0, comma 88. Whoa, that's all the way up there. Example 6, y equals x to the third minus 27. So students, for this question, we only have 2 terms, but the highest degree is going to be 3. So we get 3, 4 for the degree of the function. Max number of solutions, at most you will end up with 3 answers, aka 3 x-intercepts, aka 3 roots. Okay, so let's go and factor this out. 0 equals x to the third minus 27. I hope that you guys recognize that this is a difference of 2 cubes. Okay. Now, if you guys don't already have the difference of 2 cubes factor memorized, make sure you guys go back and look at your old notes over again. So to factor the difference of 2 cubes, it would be a minus b times the quantity of a squared plus ab plus b squared. And if you guys remember, it's called SOAP, right? S-O-A-P. So S is going to stand for the same sign. What that means, if this is negative, that means because we started out as a negative. Then the next one says always positive, right? sorry, not always positive. Next is opposite. So now this is going to be positive. So we started out as a negative, so now that's opposite. So that's now positive. Then the last one is what I meant by saying always positive. The last term, it's always positive. So. All right, so now that we have that formula written down, let's do it. Factor down in the bottom. So 0 equals, this is 2 to the third minus 3 to the third. So right away, we should have our A and our B. A is going to be X, and B is going to be 3. To use the formula, we'll fill it in. You guys ready? Equals A minus B, so X minus 3, times the quantity of A squared. Then this one says opposite, right? Opposite of the minus is now going to be plus. And I didn't mean to write A squared, I meant to write X squared. Then lastly, we're going to do always positive. So we'll fill that in just like that. So plus AB, well, A is X, B is 3, so that's going to be 3X. And lastly, B squared, so B is 3, so B squared would be 9. Okay. And again, it equals to 0. From here on, we are going to take each factor and set it equals to 0. Okay, so add 3 to both sides. We now have currently one X-intercept. Now over here on the right side, we have a trinomial, and as you guys remember, this trinomial is not factorable further. So we direct equation to solve. So x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Now from this trinomial, a would be 1, b is going to be 3, and c is now 9. So let's fill it in. X equals negative 3 plus or minus 3 squared is now 9 minus 4 times a is 1, c is 9, all over 2 times 1. All right, guys, so from here, let's try to do some basic math. X equals negative 3 plus or minus square root. Now 9 take away 4 times 1 times 9, that's going to be 36 all over 2. We can continue this down here a bit. So x equals negative 3 plus or minus 9 minus 36 under the square root is negative 27 all over 2. Let's continue to the right over here. So x equals negative 3. Any negative under the radical, make sure you rewrite it as a negative 1 times a positive 27. But 27 is really 9 times 3. So we want to break it down to perfect square numbers. That way we can simplify a bit more. So x equals negative 3 plus or minus square root of negative 1 is an I. Square root of 9 is going to be 3. Square root of 3 is going to be under the rad still, since we cannot simplify square root of 3. I'm just going to keep on going a bit more here, make it really pretty. We normally don't write I3, so what we want to do is 3i and then square root of 3 all over 2. These are two imaginary answers. They are not, okay, so they are not X-intercepts. X-intercept would only be the real answers. So even though we have 3 answers total, but we would only be writing one X-intercept. Again, repeating, it's X-intercept, it's only for real answers, okay, not imaginary. Now we have one more bit to go, which is the Y-intercept. Y-intercept, students, is when x equals to 0. So when you guys plug in 0 for x, this whole thing goes away. So that means you only have negative 27 left. So x is 0. That means x to the third, it's gone. So now you just have a negative 27. And that's just as easy as that. Ready for the next one? All right, we have 3 more, and let's go here. So y equals the quantity of x plus 3 to the third. Now, if you can see the degree, go ahead and fill that in for me. If you don't, this, students, technically it's the same thing as writing this quantity out 3 times, just like that. Okay. if you write it out 3 times, and if you guys multiply all of these back, would you agree that the very first term would give us x to the third? Because when you guys are multiplying and the bases are identical, you add the exponents, x to the third. So students, this has a degree of 3, just like that. That means at most, we are going to end up with 3 solutions, okay? X-intercept means y is going to be straight up equal to 0. So we have 3 of the identical factor. We're not going to sit here and write it out 3 times and solve. We write it out 1 time and solve. Move 3 to the left, so now x equals to 3. That's one answer, but this has a degree of 3, students, so technically this has a multiplicity of 3, okay? An odd multiplicity meaning that at this location of -3, your curve, your function, your graph, right, crosses over the x-axis. So one x-intercept. Y-intercept is going to be when x is equal to 0. So y-int x equals to 0. So y equals quantity 0 plus 3 to the third. Well, 0 plus 3 is 3, 3 to the third. That is going to give us 27. So fill that in. 0, 27. All right, ready for 8? Let's go to 8 really quickly. Well, this looks a little funky over here. Can you guys see how funky that looks? Okay, so I think that's supposed to say max number of solutions. Okay. Wow, this one has, let's see how many terms does this one have? 1 term, 2 terms, 3, 4, 5 terms. And each term has currently 1 variable x, and each x has an exponent of 1. So when we sit here and we FOIL this out, we multiply them out, we distribute them out, what you want to do is add all of these exponents. So currently, if we sit here and multiply this all out, the very first term would have an exponent of 5. Okay, so the degree is going to be 5. Well, if the degree is 5, we should have at most 5 real solutions. Okay. All right, let's solve for it. Oh, look at that. I'm even missing an x-intercept. So let's go and fill out an x-int. Something happened and then y-int. Okay, so x-int is when y equals to 0. So 0 equals x times a quantity of x minus 2 times a quantity x plus 4 times a quantity of 2x plus 7 times a quantity of x minus 1. Whew. All right. The nice part is it's factor out for us, so we don't have to do anything except take each factor and set it equals to 0. All right, look at that. One answer, done. So next one, x minus 2 equals to 0, x plus 4 equals to 0, 2x plus 7 equals to 0, and x minus 1 equals to 0. So if x minus 2 equals to 0, when you guys add 2 to both sides, we should have our second answer of x equals to 2. This is going to give us x equals to -4, third answer. Now this one, I want to minus 7 to both sides here. Okay, so that's 2x equals -7. Divide both sides by 2. So you guys, you can leave it as the lowest, simplest, improper. If you don't like that, in a simplest mixed fraction form. Either one we will be happy to accept. And fifth solution, x equals to 1. So that's a lot of answers, but that should match up with the degree, right? The degree is 5. That means we have at most 5. In this case, all 5 are real solutions. So we have to make room in our box to fill it all in. Ready? 0, 0 is 1 x-intercept. 2, 0, -4, 0, 3, -3.5, 0. And last one is 1, 0. Okay. So now we have to find the y-intercept. Y-intercept, y'all, is when x equals to 0. So are you ready? Y-int x equals to 0. Well, these are all multiplying, right? One factor multiplying another. if we put in 0 right away, right there in that spot, so y equals 0 times whatever these are, does it even matter? Okay, and I'm just gonna prove it right here, because 0 times anything is what? It's 0, so y-intercept is at 0, just like that. All right, guys, we have one more problem. Are you excited for it? Let's go. Okay, this has a degree of 6, so let's fill it in. That means we should have at most 6 answers. Sometimes we have exactly 6, just like the previous problem, we had exactly 5. Sometimes we don't, we have less, and that's okay. So let's solve for it. So x-intercept, x-int, y equals to 0. So 0 equals x to the 6 minus 1. This is the difference of 2 squares. So let's factor that out. Okay, so we're going to take x to the 3rd plus 1 times x to the 3rd minus 1. So that's how we factor difference of 2 squares. Well, oh man, this is a sum of 2 cubes and a difference of 2 cubes. So we have to use SOAP to factor that out. Ready for that? Be scared. Be very scared. All right. So SOAP said we're going to have an x plus 1, right? Then the next one is going to be opposite sign. So we're going to have an x squared, and then the sign, since that's a plus, we have a minus. And a times b, remember a for this one is x and b is going to be 1, so that's going to be x. Then the last one is always positive and it's b squared, so that's just straight up 1. That's just that first piece right here. Now let's factor the second one, which is a different of 2 squared, but it's very similar. We would have 2 factors, we know that much, right? And a is still x and b is still 1, so it's going to be x minus 1. And the reason is minus is because it's a difference of 2 cubes. So we are starting out with a minus. Then we have a squared, which is now x squared. Opposite sign, a times b, which is 1 times x. And lastly, 1 squared, which is 1. All right. That's a lot of factors. Then take each factor and set it equal to 0. Okay, so x plus 1 equals to 0. So we have one real x-intercept, one real solution. The next one is x squared minus x plus 1 equals to 0. We would need to use the quadratic formula for that. And the next one is another real solution. So we have 2 real solutions so far. And the very last trinomial, let's set that equal to 0. Okay. Are you guys ready for quadratic formula? X equals negative b, right? So let me write it up here for you guys. X equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Well, we have an a value of 1, a b value of negative 1, and a c value of 1. All right, guys. X equals negative b, well, b is already negative 1, so it's going to be 1 plus or minus b squared. So that's going to be negative 1 quantity squared minus 4 times a times c. Well, a is 1, c is 1, so that's just going to be minus 4. All over 2 times a is 1, so now 2. Now what's interesting is what's under the radical. Okay, be very cautious, students. The idea of a negative 1 squared, that turns into a positive number. So you have a positive 1 under the radical, take away 4, that would totally give us a negative 3 under the square root, okay? Now again, just like one of the problems earlier, we want to write it as a negative 1 under the square root times a positive 3 under the square root. And I want you guys to tell me, what do we turn that square root of negative 1 to? Did you say I? Very good, y'all. Okay, that is true. Okay, square root of negative 1, it's an imaginary answer, and we turn that into an I. All right, so that 2 imaginary complex roots So currently we got 4. But remember, we have a degree of 6. So that means we should have 6 answers, but not all of them are going to be real answers, as you can see here. So 6, at most 6 real solutions. But looks like we are going to end up with some imaginary solutions here. Let's do the same thing here for x squared plus x plus 1. Now for this one, your b value is now positive. So, but a is still, whoops, I'm trying to write, a is still 1, positive 1, and c is 1. So now that we have written down a, b, c, let's rock and roll. X equals negative 1, which is negative b, plus or minus b squared, which is now 1 squared. I'm just going to go and write 1 squared. Well, student, 1 squared is 1, minus 4 times a times c. Well, a is 1, c is 1, so that's just now negative 4. All over 2 times a again is 1. So x equals negative 1 plus or minus, under the radical is now negative 3, all over 2. Well, this looks pretty similar to the other trinomial, wouldn't you agree? Except the other trinomial had a positive 1 in the front, and we have a negative 1. So we do the same thing, okay? And again, go ahead and make sure you change that into an I, okay? And so we have 2 more complex solutions. So we should have 6 answers, but out of the 6 answers, we only have 2 real solutions, okay? So max number of solutions will be 6, only 2 of them are real. So we would only need to write 2 down for the X-Intercept. So X-Intercept is going to be plus or minus 1 comma 0. Yes, you can write it just like that. Now, the Y-Intercept is super easy. Y-Intercept is when x equals to 0. So when we plug in 0 for that, it's gone. So now we just have negative 1 for the Y-Intercept. And look at that, we are all done.